Much indeed. Let's go and talk to one of the leading lights in the No campaign. That is Professor Nick Bourne. Mr. Bourne, good morning to you.
Hello, Huw.
What do you make of it so far, then?
Well, obviously I'm mightily encouraged. All the people here have worked incredibly hard on this campaign. It's a tribute to what they've done. We've been outgunned in terms of resources, but the results so far are going our way, and we're cautiously optimistic. But we're not claiming victory until we've actually got victory.
I wouldn't expect you to claim victory. What's your hunch?
It's going our way, certainly. The Cardiff result's very encouraging. If they can't win in Cardiff, the seat of the Assembly, they really have got no mandate for this Assembly. If you look at what they've actually done, is they've split Wales. The government has succeeded in dividing Wales, and that's very sad. But I hope that the result will be good for Wales, and that will, of course, be a no vote.
If it's a narrow no vote or a narrow yes vote, that is by definition divisive anyway, isn't it?
It is divisive. It's clear that it's divisive, but there's certainly no mandate for an Assembly. The turnout indicates that. The vote so far indicates there is certainly no mandate for an Assembly. It is disappointing that the government has pushed this referendum in the way that they have. It's disappointing they tried to bounce this result the way that Scotland went. There's no mandate. This is actually a victory for the No campaign, whatever happens. We were outgunned in terms of resources. The government had propaganda on its side. It's been a David and Goliath battle. The way it looks at the moment, it looks as if David is going to win it. Well,
let's just get one thing absolutely clear. If at the end of the morning it is, let's say, a narrow yes, will you then be campaigning forcefully for the whole thing to be dropped nonetheless?
Well, it's very clear on what's happened so far that there are substantial parts of Wales that have voted against this Assembly. I can't see how the government, you should throw that question at the government, I can't see how the government can claim that this is a mandate for an Assembly on the votes we've got, Huw.
Just a final thought from you, Professor Bourne. What is the main argument that you've deployed, you think, that has worked best for you?
Well, I think the enormous cost of this Assembly, that would mean the cost of 2 hospitals or 15 schools, and the constitutional implications for the whole of the United Kingdom. There have been those 2 arguments that we've deployed, and we've deployed them very successfully, I think.
Professor Nick Bourne of the No campaign, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
At this early hour. Now, I'm told that we're expecting Neath very shortly. Now, that's very interesting, simply because, of course, it is the seat of the Welsh Office Minister, Peter Hain. We were talking to Mr Hain at the start of the programme tonight. Now, as we can see, Professor Sunderland is ready, and I think, yes, it's with the Neath result.
Dyma'r canlyniadau ar gyfer Castell Neath Port Talbot. Here are the results for Neath Port Talbot. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros yr wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad I Gymru oedd. The number of valid votes cast for I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 36,730. 36,730. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros nid wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad I Gymru oedd. The number of valid votes cast for I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 18,463. I'll repeat that.
Now, that is a very big win in Neath Port Talbot. Peter Hain's stomping ground as well of the Attorney General, John Morris. That is a very big vote for the Yes campaign. It's a very solidly Labour area, some very, very safe Labour seats there. And I suppose that this is the classic example of Labour bringing out its vote in favour of its own proposals, and with 2 very prominent ministers, of course, as part of the Yes campaign. I've no doubt that that helped locally. To get the precise figures then, and to see what the size of that was and what implications it might have, over to you, Peter.
Well, now we are moving west a bit, and it's getting more encouraging for the yeses, but it's still very close indeed. Here we have Neath over here, about halfway across the southern side of Wales, 52% turnout, 36,730 for yes, 18,463 for no. A whacking great yes win there. 66.5, nearly 2/3 of the people, the voters in Neath who've actually voted have said yes. Only 1/3 have said no. The majority then, 33% yes in Neath, the highest yes vote so far. And now we can look at the picture in Wales as a whole after 12 results. There's a patchwork of green and red for no. Look how it's tucked away at the east side here, the nose. The yeses coming up more as we move to the west. 12 results then. There's the winning post, 550,000, just halfway through. How near are they? The yes vote, 248,593. The no vote, 274,000, still ahead, 530. Shares, 47.5, 52.5. A majority for the no's so far then of just 5%. Now, let's just, for interest's sake, compare things as they are now with what they ended up as in 1979. In 1979, there were 20.3% yes in Wales and 79.7%, a 4-to-1 defeat for a Welsh Assembly back in 1979. Compare that with what we have this time so far, with half the Welsh electorate now declared, 47.5%, 52.5% saying no, 5% ahead of the yes vote in Wales. Compare the two then. Here we have the two yes votes, 20.3 in 1979, and here we have much more, 47.5% yes in 1997. But what happened in 1979 was that the government was set a hurdle of 40% of the electorate it had to cross in order for that, for a yes vote, if it had been effective, it wasn't, of course, it was massively no. If the yes vote to be effective, it had to cross that hurdle of 40%. So how does that compare with this time? 11.8% was the percentage of the electorate that said yes last time, miles away from the 40%. What's happening this time so far? 22.6% only of the Welsh electorate so far saying yes, well short of that hurdle, which of course hasn't been set this time, but it does make it look not very credible, that percentage of the electorate saying yes to an assembly in Wales. Huw.
Peter, I'm told it's a joke, but they're preparing a room at the National Count for a penalty shootout. They're getting the balls and the football kit ready. You can tell that it's a pretty nail-biting finish in prospect. 12 in, 10 to go, all to play for. We're not being cowards, but we are not making a prediction at this stage. It is still, we think, too close to call. Now, we were talking just a little earlier to Robin there about regional government, the implications of today's vote for the constitutional policies of Mr Blair's government, and indeed for his plans for regional government in England, certainly for London and the North East in the first instance. Let's have a look again at some of the main points of the survey that Peter Kellner was explaining to us earlier on. He's at Westminster with Diana.
Yes, indeed. We're going to have a talk about what all this voting in Wales means for devolution in London. First of all, what demand is there for devolution in London? Well, Peter.
Diana, well, if it's a knife edge in Wales, it's a lopsided pair of scales in London. According to our poll, 500 people spoken to earlier this week, a huge 4-to-1 majority in London in favour of an assembly, 81% in favour, 19% of those who've given opinion against. And when we asked about the mayor, which is the other constitutional innovation, a directly elected mayor for London, an even bigger majority, 83 to 17%. So it looks as if the people of London don't just want their cake, they want someone to eat it for them as well.
But this would suggest that there's a lot of Conservative support for devolution in London as well as Labour support.
That's right. I think as you'd expect, Labour voters overwhelmingly go for a mayor, 90%, but so do most Conservative supporters, 78% of them. And indeed, when you ask Conservative supporters about the Assembly, again, 7 out of 10 of them say they want an Assembly for London. So in terms of the voters at least, this is not a party issue.
Peter Kellner, thank you very much indeed. Well, we have 3 London councillors with us this evening who are going to talk about the implications of the Welsh vote on devolution for London. Clive Blackwood is a Tory councillor in London. What do you think all this means?
You mean the poll or the Welsh results that we're
The results so far and the implication for devolution.
I don't think that what's happened in Scotland and what is happening tonight in Wales actually has that much of an impact on what is going to happen in London. The results that we had in Scotland didn't have an impact, so far as I could see, on public opinion over the last week in London. And we're talking about very different things. The debate hasn't started in London, it's just finishing in Scotland and Wales.
So you were keen for an elected mayor in London?
Oh, certainly we would want an elected mayor in London, and we would also want an assembly that takes from local councils and puts representatives from those local councils into some kind of authority.
As opposed to a separate elected assembly,
As opposed to a separately elected assembly. But of course, Labour haven't yet made clear what their plans are, so it's very difficult for the opposition parties to respond.
However, that poll would suggest that, in fact, that elected assembly would have a great deal of grassroots support. And then one would ask oneself, why aren't the Tories banking on that? Why aren't they trying to capitalise on what is the public mood?
Well, if you'd asked in that poll the same respondents, do you wish to take powers away from your elected local council?
But that wasn't the question asked.
No, I know that wasn't the question asked. I'm putting to you that if you had asked that question, do you want to take powers away from your local councillors that you've just elected and hand them over to another bureaucratic tier of government, you may well have found that you've got a very, very different answer.
What do you think, Valerie Shawcross, you're a Labour councillor, about the implications of the Welsh vote here?
Well, I think the whole point of these referendums about devolution is that it draws out the local issues. And I think for London there are so many very obvious local issues, so many obvious London-wide problems that I think people have already made their mind up that they need some sort of structure that's actually going to help solve
Would you
them.
be concerned about a mandate that, say, more than 50% would have to turn out and there would have to be a majority of so much in order to carry it through?
Well, I don't think you can be mechanistic about these things.
Well, why not?
But, well, I do agree with you that if you're going to design a new democratic structure, it has to be based in some sort of consensus and consent. It has to be respected. It has to be wanted and needed. That's quite clear, but I'm not quite sure where you would draw the percentage
If you were getting
line.
the sort of turnout and mixed response that you're getting in Wales, would that put you off the idea in London? Do you think that that's good enough to carry it?
Yes, I think it would put me off to some extent. I mean, I think you should be afraid of democracy. The point is you're asking people a question, and if the answer is no, then, you have to respect that. It would have been possible for the government to bounce through with its huge majority all these, changes. But the whole point is to ask people, and if the answer is no, respect it.
Mike Tuffney, you're a Liberal Democrat councillor. Now, the Liberal Democrats approve of an elected assembly for London. They're not so keen on a mayor, yet the poll would suggest even more support for a mayor than an elected assembly.
I think the question is, are Londoners going to get a real say, real control over their own affairs? And the contrast has already been made this evening between the Scottish package, which has tax-raising powers and real control because it's a parliament, and the weaker proposals on offer for Wales. Now,
So
the London
therefore,
proposals
is that
are even
argument that
weaker
you need
still.
tax-raising powers in London?
Yes. So the London package, from the Liberal Democrat points, we want Londoners to have real say over how the affairs of London are run. There are 7 million Londoners, 5 million in Scotland. Scotland is getting, the Scottish 5 million are going to have control over the health service, they're going to have a local income tax, control over higher and further education. That's not on offer in London, and I would be worried about putting a damp squib to Londoners and getting the sort of result we're getting back from the Welsh electorate. What we as Liberal Democrats want is real government for London.
The debate will continue. Thank you all very much indeed. Huw.
Diana, thanks very much indeed. As I was saying, 12 in, 10 to go, all to play for. We're expecting the Vale of Glamorgan to declare quite shortly, now represented, of course, by the Labour MP John Smith. It has been a Conservative seat. It was until the last election, held by the prominent Eurosceptic Walter Sweeney. Which way will that go? Barry, what's your hunch?
I think it'll go for the no campaign. There's a large swathe of Conservative voters in the Vale, and I'm not too sure that the Barry vote, the Labour vote in Barry, will be cohesive enough to counteract. So I think it will be a narrow win for the noes.
When we had the Neath Port Talbot result just now, how significant was that in terms of the actual size of it for the Yes campaign?
Well, it was enormous, and it was unexpected, and it raises the possibility of the West delivering a far higher proportion of the Yes vote than I anticipated just about half an hour ago. So I think it does indicate how difficult it is to call things in Wales, because different parts of Wales are clearly acting in quite different ways.
Right. We're also expecting Swansea any second as well, so they're all coming in suddenly. Robin, on the Vale of Glamorgan one, a rather smaller electorate there, but Swansea, of course, will be very, very significant with nearly 200,000 voters there.
Yes, indeed. But if I could just go back to Neath Port Talbot and add to Barry's point, I think one significant thing about that was it's a personal triumph for Peter Hain, who, after all, was the minister put in charge of campaigning on the devolution question by Tony Blair. And it's very significant that he's been able to deliver the vote in his own home patch to the degree that he has done.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Caerphilly does in that sense, of course, because that is Ron Davies's own constituency, and from that point of view, I suppose we're all waiting with interest for that. No sign of that, by the way, yet, Robin. Let's just talk about the pattern as it's now emerging. Are we thinking that perhaps there will be surprise pockets, unexpectedly large yes votes in some areas we hadn't quite expected, which may mean that the advantage the no's were talking about previously might appear not to be so prominent.
Well, I think I've certainly given up expecting, Huw. It is such a diverse coat of many colours that we're seeing paraded before us tonight that I'm not going to hang on to any assumptions that I started this evening with, frankly, now.
Fine. And another exceptionally interesting result just coming up, Barry, as well, they're all competing at the moment, is Ceredigion, now represented, of course, by the Plaid Cymru MP, Conway Davies. It's a Plaid Cymru MP in Anglesey, Ian Wyn-Jones. We saw what the vote was there. It was very, very narrowly in favour of the yeses, but it was very, very narrow indeed. In Ceredigion, we're now looking at really crucial territory, aren't we, for the yes campaign?
Well, there's one difference. There isn't the same proportion of English in-migrants in Ceredigion as you've got on the south coast of Anglesey. And Holyhead itself is very cosmopolitan.
Here's Ceredigion, here's Cardigan.
Dyma'r canlyniadau ar gyfer Ceredigion. Here are the results for Ceredigion. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros yr wyf yn cytuno a dylid cael cynulliad I Gymru oedd. The number of valid votes cast for I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 19,304, 18,304. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros nid wyf yn cytuno a dylid cael cynulliad I Gymru oedd. The number of valid votes cast for I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 20,614, 12,614. Nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd. The number of rejected ballot papers was 185, 185.
Now, that perhaps alters the balance a little. It's a very good result for the yes. Perhaps it's not surprising given the nature of the area, predominantly Welsh-speaking area, some strong support for Plaid Cymru and for Labour in this area in the past. So, Peter, where does that leave us?
Well, Ceredigion has said yes, but is it decisive enough yes to begin to tilt it the yes's way? Really not clear yet. 18,304 for yes in Ceredigion, 12,614 no's in this very Welsh area of Wales over here in the west. Strong Plaid Cymru, strong Liberal Democrat area, 57% the turnout there, also strong Labour area, Tories rather weak there, and the percentage shares in Ceredigion then, the shares 59.2 to 40.8, so yes, a hefty win for the yeses, majority of 18.4%. Let's just put it all together now and see how Wales looks after 13 results, 13 of the 22. We're now beginning to go over the halfway mark in terms of the votes cast. 266,000 against 287,000 for no. Turnout now settling down, as you can see, below the halfway mark, 48%. 48.2% yes, 51.8% no. They're getting closer together, and we are forecasting. Have we got a forecast yet? No, we're still not able to call it. It's still too close to call. Huw.
Peter, you coward. Absolutely. But it's exciting, at least. That's one thing you can say about the story. Very good result, obviously, for those who are strongly in favour, including Plaid Cymru. The Plaid Cymru President, David Wigley, joins us now from the national count in Cardiff. Mr Wigley, bore da, good morning.
Bore da.
What do you make of the whole picture? I know you'll be pleased with Ceredigion, but what do you make of the whole picture?
It's going to be totally nerve-wracking. It's going to go right up to the wire, and it could be almost a dead heat. Now, then what we make out of that, goodness only knows, but people said it would be close. I don't think anybody imagined it's going to be as close as it will.
I just explore the painful prospect for you, Mr Wigley, of, well, the most painful prospect obviously would be a no vote, but almost as painful, a very, very, very narrow yes win. Immediately there'd be questions about the credibility of this, wouldn't there?
Well, I think that people on the yes side accept that if the no side get more votes than the yes side, the no side wins. And equally, the converse. If yes gets more votes, the yes side wins. And one would expect that then to be implemented.
Let's take Ynys Môn Anglesey as one example, Mr Wigley, held by you there by your colleague Ian Wyn-Jones since 1987. Why on earth do you think was there such a narrow margin there? Why wasn't it a greater margin for the yes campaign?
Well, we have to bear in mind that Anglesey was held by the Conservative Party from 1979 to 1987. a very strong Conservative vote there, and although it was eroded in the general election, perhaps they are reverting a little bit to type there. There's also the fact that Anglesey is the furthest part away from Cardiff, and there was a lot made in the campaign by the no side on the polarisation between north and south. I think that was regrettable, and it may have had an effect on the result there.
What was the main factor that you found yourself combating during the campaign, the main quarrel that people had with the concept of a Welsh Assembly?
It wasn't a quarrel with the concept of Welsh Assembly. It was a lack of information, a feeling that people hadn't been given enough on which to make a decision. That's what led to perhaps a higher than expected abstention. We appear to be getting about a 50% turnout as opposed to the 60% in Scotland. And that probably led to a few people playing safe and voting no. I think William Hague played into that last night in his last-minute message. If you're uncertain, vote no, he said.
I don't suppose you could complain at all about the enthusiasm with which Ron Davies and Peter Hain tackled their own campaigning.
I'll pay tribute to both Ron Davies and Peter Hain, and indeed Wyn Griffiths, the Welsh office team. They have worked very hard indeed, and nobody can criticise them for that. We can perhaps split hairs about the details of the proposals. We would have liked to have seen a lawmaking parliament, and the interesting opinion poll gave 57% support in Wales only last Monday for an assembly if it had lawmaking powers. That's what was offered Scotland, that's what we didn't get in Wales, and had we got it, then perhaps we would have had a larger yes vote today.
You feeling despondent at this moment, Mr. Wigley?
I'm feeling jittery at this moment because we really don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Mr. Wigley, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I understand that we will get the Vale of Glamorgan very shortly. I know that the returning officer, Professor Sunderland, is preparing to come to the platform in a few moments' time. A quick word, therefore, with Barry, first of all, on that, the remarks there made by David Wigley, clearly not wanting to start complaining about Labour at this stage, but seeming to suggest there that perhaps there would have been a more positive vote, ironically, for a stronger proposal. Is there any basis for that?
Well, this happened in '79, you know, when the defeat was catastrophic, that there was more support for a more radical form of devolution than that which was offered. The problem really is to try and work out a kind of arrangement which will be sufficient to meet the demands of the devolutionists without antagonizing those who are skeptical about it. And it's very difficult, and the evidence tonight just shows you how difficult it is.
Another result.
Dyma'r canlyniadau ar gyfer Bro Morgannwg. Here are the results for the Vale of Glamorgan. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros yr wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad i Gymru oedd the number of valid votes cast for I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 17,776, 17,776. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros nid wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad i Gymru oedd the number of valid votes cast for I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 30,613, 30,613. I'll repeat that, 30,613. Nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd the number of rejected ballot papers was...
That will be a great disappointment to the local Labour MP there, John Smith, who has been campaigning very strongly for devolution. Having said that, this is an area which for many years had a Conservative MP, and indeed it had a Conservative MP in the space between 92 and 97. A big, big majority for the no's. Peter, the figures.
You indeed, but you said it, of course. It was a Conservative area sometime. There still is a lot of Conservative support there. So again, we have to be cautious, but it's extraordinary the way these things are bouncing around. Right, here we have 17,776 for yes in the Vale of Glamorgan down here, west of Cardiff. 30,613 for no there, almost 2 to 1, not quite. 36.7% yes, 63.3% no in the Vale of Glamorgan. A majority for the no's of 26.5%. And again, let's add them all together and see how we're building up now towards the winning post. Here are the yeses and the no's on the map. 551,000 is the magic target figure for either side. 284,000 now, they're creeping up towards it. We're well over halfway up the electorate now, 317,757 for no, so no is pushing a little bit further ahead now, 47.3 to 52.7, a majority for the no's of 5.5%. And now a quick look at the local results, one by one. There we have the yes majorities, the biggest, Neath, Port Talbot, down to 2% in Anglesey, the very narrow yes vote up here in that Plaid Cymru seat in Parliament. No majorities in Torfaen, 0.3, the tightest there, going down through Cardiff, the biggest, by far the biggest area of Wales, 10% of the electorate. It's 11% no there, the majority, down to the biggest so far, 36%, and the Vale of Glamorgan in second place, the biggest no, the second biggest no there, 27% majority. Huw.
Yeah. 14 down, 8 to go. We are still not making a prediction because we still think it's too close to call, though of course the no's are now edging ahead according to the latest tot-up of the figures there, but there are quite a few results to come in, 8 results to come in, and some big ones among them, not least Swansea and Carmarthenshire and places like that, and of course Ron Davies's own result in Caerphilly. That'll be an interesting one to watch. Just a little more now on the implications beyond Offers Dyke. We were talking about a little earlier on about the implications for the prospect of regional government and attitudes in England towards that, not just towards their own regional government, but towards the process of devolution to Scotland and Wales. We'll nip back to Westminster and join again Peter and Diana.
Indeed, we'll have a look now at the English regions and the demands for devolution there, according to our poll this week. Well, Peter, what do we have?
Diana, a few moments ago we saw in London there's a 4-to-1 majority for an assembly, but if you look at the rest of England, outside London, sample of 1,000 earlier this week by NOP, we find no great enthusiasm. 44% of those who had a view said they'd like an assembly for their region of England, but the majority, 56%, said no, they didn't want a regional assembly. And we looked particularly at North West. We've been hearing about the North West influence in Wrexham and that part of Wales. What about the other way around? What about the influence perhaps of Wales on that part of England? Well, they're 50-50, and too close to call as in Wales. So I think the best one can say is there's muted enthusiasm. There's clearly no great clarion call in England outside London for regional assemblies, and certainly not in the North West.
So too close, we predict, for the North West as well as in Wales. Huw.
Diana, thanks very much indeed. Well, we were talking a little earlier to some of the people there in Liverpool about their attitudes, young people there, a young Englishman, Scotsman and a Welsh girl. Of course, how could I forget? I think she was called Bethan. So we'll go hot foot back to Liverpool and see what Carol Walker's got to say. Carol.
Yes, and welcome back to Liverpool Hope University College in the city's Albert Dock. As you saw there, 50-50 for a regional assembly in this area. It has got a very strong regional identity, but of course it also has very strong ties to Wales. And I'm joined now by Terry Thomas, who's the Managing Director of the Cooperative Bank, and also the Chairman of the North West Partnership, which involves public and private sectors, Lynn Turnbull, who was the Conservative candidate for Ellesmere Port and Neston at the last election, and Louise Ellman, who's the Labour MP here in Liverpool Riverside. What do you think now is the likelihood of any moves towards a regional assembly, given that everything points to a very, very close vote in Wales?
Well, here in the North West, we've already formed a shadow regional assembly, and that regional assembly has brought together the public, private and voluntary sectors, and it's an assembly that now needs official recognition, because we do need to have accountability for the regional tier which is already operating in the form of many, many quangos in government offices not accountable to the regions in which they work. We need policies which deliver better jobs and training, public transport and environment, all regional issues, and we need a focal point for the people of the region to put their case to the UK government and indeed to the European Union. We're well on the way to that here in the North West, and I find that 50-50 result at this point, without any campaigning, an extremely encouraging one.
Lynn Turnbull, you need some democratic accountability at a regional level in this area.
Well, I must actually correct Louise. We actually have an association at the moment that looks after this. We certainly don't need an elected body. It's another level of bureaucracy, which is going to cost a great deal of money. The way I look at it is the fact that we've already got councillors in situ and everything else. We do not need an elected body that is possibly going to row with Westminster cause large problems, and all it's going to be is a very expensive talking shop.
Terry Thomas, do you detect on the ground a real desire to have another tier of government here?
Now, what you remember here is we're looking at major constitutional change, and as predicted, different parts of the country will want to move at different speeds. And here in Wales, we're looking at 50-50 at the moment in terms of the votes going through. But you remember they've got a Secretary of State in the Cabinet, they've got a Welsh Development Agency. We don't have a regional development agency. And once you put the question to people in the Northwest about deciding their own fate through a regional development agency, they want that. And then it's logical, if they want that, then they will want an assembly as well.
Louise Elman, do you think that there is a likelihood that the government, looking at what seems almost certain to be a very tight vote in Wales, might actually think that now is not the time to try to push this whole question of regional development, that it's perhaps time to take a deep breath and think again?
I think it's time to move forward, and it's time to recognise that we do have the regional tier. That regional tier operates through many, many quangos, which are extremely expensive and which are extremely unpopular. We do want accountability. We want the work of the Shadow Assembly here in the Northwest to be developed, to bring more jobs, to work more closely with the European Union, and to provide a focal point for the voice of the people of the Northwest. What we've done up to now has been extremely popular, but we want that to be strengthened. I think that this is the time to move forward. There is great feeling here in the Northwest that we want to do that. The survey that we've heard the results of tonight, very, very encouraging, because we haven't campaigned on that yet in a proper way. I think we should seize the moment. Regionalism is here to stay. We want an elected assembly, more democracy.
Lynn Turnbull, do you not think if we do end up with a Welsh assembly, that you will need to have a strong regional voice to be able to rival that? Otherwise you're going to get investment going into Wales instead of into the Northwest.
No, absolutely not. The Liverpool Council here, as you well know, the council tax here is one of the highest in the country. If we start having things like this bureaucracy of an elected assembly, what is going to happen then? It's the people that are going to pay. The people in this city don't understand yet what exactly is actually being said and what is going to be done. And I actually think that what we have got in situ at the present moment are good councillors on the Wirral and here in Merseyside. And not only that, where would this elected assembly come from? Would it be in Manchester? Are we then going to have arguments between Manchester and Liverpool?
We've been
fair point, isn't it?
We've been very
parochial. A lot of
parochial.
rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester.
There has been, but we look at Europe. We're part of Europe now, and it's Europe of the regions. And if we look at the Northwest region, our gross domestic product is bigger than 5 member countries of Europe. And are we to say to the people that generate that gross domestic product that they, unlike 5 countries in Europe, are unable to decide their own fate for the future?
But it's going to be very difficult, isn't it, to define this Northwest region and to decide where its centre should be.
We've already defined it. We know what it is.
Very sorry to miss that, because we've got a result. It's Conway.
Dyma'r canlyniadau ar gyfer Conwy. Here are the results for Conwy. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros yr wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad i Gymru oedd the number of valid votes cast for I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 19,369, 18,369. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros nid wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad i Gymru oedd the number of valid votes cast for I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 26,521, 26,521. Nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd the number of rejected ballot papers was 130.
That is the Yes Party, needless to say. Look at those faces. Simply because, of course, that is a whopping great defeat for the Yes campaign in Conway, in an area where they might have expected actually to do rather better, if not to score a victory there. The local MP, Betty Williams, the Labour MP, was elected there in May, and she's a very prominent local campaigner. She's been campaigning for devolution for a long time, and this will be a great blow to her, certainly. She didn't expect it to go this way. However, let's have a look at the figures and see where they leave us now. Peter.
Well, here we go. Conway, again, it's gone the other way. It's a vote for the noes in Conway. It has to be said, of course, you were saying the Labour MP will be disappointed, but it was, of course, a Conservative seat, Conway, until the last general election. 18,369 for yes, a big no lump of votes there, though, 26,521 in Conway. 40.9 yes, 59.1 no, so a very solid majority for the noes in Conway, 18.2% in fact. And now let's have a look at Wales as a whole. Our winning post after 15 results, settling down now at 553,000, the winning post. Yes votes on the left, the green ones, 303,000. The no, 344,000. The gap is definitely opening up again, and the shares 46.8 to 53.2. A majority then for the noes of some 6.4% after 15 to 22 results. Now, key ones to come. Watch for Swansea. There's the Gower Peninsula, the second biggest of all in Wales. Watch for the Rhondda, Taff there, a very important area of Wales. Two very big Labour-supporting areas in Wales still to come with very big electorates. Huw.
Peter, thanks very much. 15 down, 7 to go. Still very close. The gap slightly opening, as we saw for the no campaign. So let's go to probably the most prominent figure in the no campaign, Michael Ancram, who joins us once again. Mr. Ancram, good morning again.
Good morning.
So, are you more encouraged now than you were?
I'm being very cautious this evening. It's going to be very close. I want to wait until I see the final outcome before I start either celebrating or taking a firm view. But what is absolutely clear is that the people of Wales tonight have not spoken with a clear voice. We're seeing different voices, different parts of Wales. We're seeing very low polls in general. We're seeing Cardiff voting against having an assembly in Cardiff. It's not the ringing endorsement that the government was seeking, and I hope that they'll look at this very closely indeed.
Is it not the case, Mr. Ancram, that whichever way it goes this morning, this issue is not going to go away, is it? Simply because you are going to have a big slab of opinion either way, which is going to be very, very unhappy with the result.
Well, absolutely, but what the government was seeking was, as I understand it, the settled will of the people of Wales. Whatever else they have tonight, they have not got that. And we have a divided view, we have a divided Wales. As I say, we have, in many cases, less than half the people in areas actually voting, and that has very serious implications for this policy. And I certainly will be wanting to look at the implications very closely.
You're running your figures through your own computers there, Mr. Ancram, I'm sure. Are you now more hopeful than you were?
I've always said right from the beginning of this I wasn't going to make a prediction, and I think I'm right, because I think it'll be very close right up to the end. There are some substantial returns to come yet, and I think we must just wait and see them.
Very wise, probably. Mr. Ancram, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Mr. Ancram there rightly saying that there are some big results to come. Swansea, a huge result, 174,000 electors there. Swansea is about to declare, but it's not quite ready yet. I think probably it's time to have a quick few comments from Glyn and the panel.
Glyn. Well, I'll go straight to Nigel Evans, who comes from Swansea originally. His family still live there. What do you think Swansea's going to do?
The faintest idea. I travelled both sides of Swansea today, and I seem to get a very good reception in the west side and not so good in the east side. So it could be, Swansea itself could be too close to call. But I think what is significant is that Wales is now going to wake up this morning to being a split nation. And this is something that needn't have happened. And it is a creation of the government. And I think that serious questions now must be asked of the role that many of them have played in this particular campaign. But it is a very, very sorry day for Wales.
Ancram, you've been getting a bit nervous, increasingly nervous as the results come in. How important is it now that Swansea does go yes?
Oh, very important. I mean, it's been a nail-biting few hours for us. I think Swansea will go yes. Obviously, Cardiff didn't want the Assembly, and people in North Wales wouldn't vote for it because they didn't want it in Cardiff. Maybe we've got to find another centre for it. Maybe Aberystwyth after all.
I must hand you back to Huw.
It's Swansea, it's the big one.
Drwy hyn yn hysbysu fy mod wedi ardistio canlyniadau canlynol. I, Vivian Sugar, being the counting officer for the City and County of Swansea, hereby give notice that I certified the following results. Yn y Sir Enwyd, in the said county, nifer pleidleisiau dilys a fywor dros y datganiad yr wyf yn cyftino y dilyd cael gynulliad I Cymru oedd 42,789. The number of valid votes cast for the proposition, I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly, was 42,789. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwrwyd dros a datganiad, nid oedd y cytuno y dilyd cael cynulliad I Gymru, oedd 39,561. The number of valid votes cast for the proposition, I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly, was 39,561. Nifer papurau pleidleisio.
That is very, very good news for the Yes campaign, because things were getting rather dodgy for them a few minutes ago. But Swansea, very, very solid Labour territory, of course, has actually voted for the Welsh Assembly. Just looking there at the ballpark figures, some 3,000 or so, a majority there for the Yes. We'll come over to Nigel Evans a little later on, because that's his hometown, of course, see what he makes of that result. But before we do that, let's just get the figures from Peter.
The third biggest electorate in Wales, Rhondda is the second, still to come, Caerphilly is still to come, some of the biggest ones still to come. There's Swansea, the Gower Peninsula sticking out there, 47% the turnout in Swansea. In spite of the low turnout, the Yeses have taken it, 42,789 to 39,561, 52 to 48%. The majority of 3.9% for the Yeses. And now let's add all Wales together again. After 16 results, just 6 to go. Mainly down here in the south, Powys and Gwynedd still to come up in the north. Just two huge slabs of Wales to come there. Otherwise, it's down in the valleys, and it's Pembrokeshire and Carmarthen. After 16 results then, there's the winning post. The Yes votes peaking at 345,831 at the moment, and the No's on 383,839, some 40,000 ahead still. The shares, 47.4 to 52.6%. A majority so far for the No's then of 5.2%. Still, we reckon, too close to call.
Huw. Peter, thank you very much. 16 down, 6 to go. I promised Nigel Evans a chance to respond, so let's go over to Glyn and the panel.
All right, Nigel Evans, you won. You lost, but only just.
Well, I said it was too close to call, and funnily enough, the margin that Swansea got may be the final margin you end up with this evening. I would have expected that the Gower end would have voted no, and then as you went eastwards, they voted yes. But the significant thing there again is a 47% turnout, which means that the people of Swansea, again, the majority of them have said, we're not enthusiastic about this proposal, and that is quite significant. So irrespective of what happens in this result tonight, yet again, the people who stayed at home are winning the day.
Lambert, we were told by the experts that it was the yes voters who were going to be more likely to go to the polls than the no voters, and this is what was going to take it for the yes vote, but that doesn't seem to be happening.
Well, do bear in mind that some of the highest turnout areas are yet to declare. But having said that, there is some analysis to be done here. If there is a big no vote, it's obviously nothing to do with the no campaign. They've been pretty ineffectual, perhaps to some extent.
But how can you say that? I mean, they seem to do rather well.
Well, let me explain what I mean by that. First of all, the kind of comments and kind of warnings that they've made, many of them have been simply incredible. But what may have happened is that the yes campaign, you simply haven't been effective enough at simplifying and clarifying the benefits in a palatable form.
Helen Mary Jones, which way do you think it's now going to go?
I think it's impossible to tell. I mean, we've got some of those really big seats like Caerphilly and Rhondda and Taff to come, and whereas we might expect substantial yes votes there, we've had some very surprising results, like the result in Anglesey tonight. So it really is impossible to tell.
Well, what about the Conway result, for instance? You should have got Conway.
I don't think so. I think Peter rightly pointed out the big Conservative bloc. I mean, it was more of a surprise that Labour won that, to be honest. I really don't think we know what's going to happen yet.
I've got to hand back to Huw.
Glyn, we'll nip over to Swansea very quickly to have a word with one of the local MPs there, the MP for Gower, Martin Caton. Mr. Caton, good morning.
Good morning.
In line with expectations or not in Swansea?
I'm very happy with the Swansea result. I think that we knew it was always going to be a marginal case for Swansea. The fact that we did tip it for a yes vote, I'm very pleased with. I'm sad that across Wales that hasn't been reflected.
What were the main factors, therefore, that tipped it in your favour?
I think that with a reasonable proportion of people that we actually managed to make contact with, we convinced them that it wasn't the slippery slope nationalism or separation from the rest of the United Kingdom. It was about democracy. And where we made that case clearly, we convinced people to switch from no to yes and convince them, the don't knows, that they should be voting yes. Sadly, perhaps we didn't contact enough people.
Whose fault is that?
I don't think it's anybody's fault. Democracy in Britain, and certainly in this part of Wales, depends on a comparatively small number of activists trying to get out and reaching other people. In this sort of issue, we found a real generation gap. More elderly people were very hesitant about voting yes, needed a lot of convincing. Where in a general election you'd spend a couple of minutes on the doorstep trying to talk to somebody, you needed to spend 15 minutes, 20 minutes to explain the arguments with the Welsh Assembly, and there's only a limited amount of time during the campaign.
I'm just slightly surprised, Mr. Caton, at your description there of the difficulties in campaigning, simply because, of course, you were backed up very prominently by, not just by the Deputy Prime Minister, but by the Prime Minister himself. So you can hardly complain that you've not had a prominent campaign.
No, that sort of campaigning was very good. The high-profile stuff...
Mr. Caton, I'm very sorry to cut across you. We are expecting a result. Thank you very much.
Council,
okay.
Hereby give notice that I certified the following results in the said county borough. The number of valid votes cast for the proposition, I agree there should be a Welsh Assembly, was 51,201. The number of valid votes cast for the proposition, I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly, was 36,300.
Well, this is the result from Rhondda, Cynon, Taf. That is, of course, the heart of the valley area. You can see the result there. They are jubilant. It is a very good majority there in Rhondda, Cynon, Taf, those three valleys, for the yes campaign. It is a yes win, a very convincing one as well. Mr. Caton, I apologize to Mr. Caton, who we left slightly in the air a few minutes ago, because we needed to get that result, clearly very significant result, and I think we should get the precise nature of that majority and where that might lead us, perhaps, who knows, to a prediction, Peter.
Who knows, who knows, let's try. Right, there's first of all then the Rhondda, Cynon, Taf. This is the second biggest electorate in Wales. There's that big valley, Rhondda, Cynon, Taf there, running right the way down to the northern end of Cardiff, and we have 51,000 votes for a Welsh Assembly, 36,000 against, so it's a pretty hefty majority for in Rhondda, 58.5 to 41.5, a majority of 17% yes in Rhondda, Cynon, Taf. So that's a great boost for the yes vote. After 17 results, 5 still to go. Let's see how it's moving up now towards the winning post. There's the target, 552,000 votes. The yes have got to 397,032. That's another 150,000 to go. The no's have 420,201, 130,000 to go. And that's 48.6 to 51.4. And are we going to be able to forecast the result? Sorry, Huw.
Peter, you have to do better than that. Thanks very much indeed. Right, okay, Robin, on this basis, it seems a bit invidious to start saying what if, but if, as seems possible at least, it's a narrow no vote, where would that then leave Mr. Blair?
A narrow no vote would leave Mr. Blair much perplexed with his constitutional reform programme, considerable amount of the gloss knocked off it. As I was saying earlier, if you're going to go for decentralisation of power and you don't get a Welsh Assembly, that is going to make a mess of the whole plans. This vigorous programme of constitutional reform involving reform of the House of Lords, a referendum on PR, convention on European Convention on Human Rights, Freedom of Information Act, all the rest of it. There might perhaps be a little bit of a pause for a rethink, wonder whether they might concentrate a bit more on bread and butter issues and a bit less on the constitutional issues. I think there'll be a certain amount of wondering too at the way in which they played the campaign, if it does turn out that they don't get the yes they wanted. In a sense, Labour rather tried to play it, this is your second chance to kick the Tories in a year, but whether it was by accident or design on the Tory side, there haven't been too many prominent Tories around in this campaign. William Hague has been down a couple of times, but not too many prominent figures in the Tory party around. So perhaps it's been harder than Labour imagined to bring their own troops out in terms of having another go at the Tories. That particular bit hasn't worked, and maybe Labour will regret perhaps not being bolder in the powers they've given the Welsh Assembly, because people have said no extra powers, no lawmaking functions. It's just another lot of politicians talking together. It's going to cost us 15 to 20 million pounds a year. Do we really want to spend that money for a lot more politicians?
Okay, so some of those points surely can be put to people at the Yes campaign, simply because they're answering some of the complaints they've had. Let's have a look at some pictures now from the National Count Centre. There's Ron Davies just disappearing there through that hole at the back, but I assure you it is Ron Davies. He's just gone there. He looked, I must say, he didn't look distraught. He didn't look distraught at all. On the other hand, he was hardly looking jubilant either, and you wouldn't expect that. Let's go down to the Yes campaign and join Michael Crick again with one of the campaigners to explore what's going on. Michael.
Thank you, Huw. I'm joined here by Kevin Brennan, a Cardiff councillor and the chairman of the Cardiff Says Yes campaign. Kevin Brennan, how do you think it's going at the moment?
Well, I think it's going to be a very close result, but it looks like it's not going to go for a yes vote tonight. I think it's looking fairly close, but I think we may well go down.
You think you've lost it?
It's very, very close. We're still hoping for a yes result. There's still a few more results to come in, but I think it's going to be extremely close, but perhaps we might lose tonight.
Where have you gone wrong here? Where's Labour gone wrong?
Well, I think that it's been very unfortunate that Labour hasn't presented a unified position on this. Several MPs in South Wales have come out against, despite the fact that in the Labour manifesto we were clearly committed to a referendum and to campaigning for a yes vote in a referendum. And I think in the end, if it's a very close vote and we lose by a small margin, the blame must go on those people from the Labour Party who turned against the referendum campaign.
Would you favour taking strong disciplinary action against them? Would you suggest that their parties should deselect them, for instance?
It's a matter for the local parties, and it's very interesting to see that in those constituencies where Labour MPs have come out against the referendum, that the people in those constituencies have voted in favour of the decision.
We've got another result, this time from Pembrokeshire.
Dyma'r canlyniadau ar gyfer Sir Benfro. Here are the results for Pembrokeshire. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros yr wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad i Gymru oedd: the number of valid votes cast for I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 19,979, 19,979. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwriwyd dros nid wyf yn cytuno y dylid cael cynulliad i Gymru oedd: the number of valid votes cast for I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 26,712, 26,712. Nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd: the number of rejected ballot papers was 156.
Well, that's very bad news for the Yes campaign. Obviously, delight there among the No campaigners. Perhaps not that surprising, I'd suggest, with Pembrokeshire, simply because, although there are some Labour MPs there now, it is very much Conservative Labour marginal area, and it is known for some reasons as Little England beyond Wales, simply because of the nature of the linguistic and the cultural divide that exists between South and North Pembrokeshire there. But a big win there for the No campaign. Peter?
Well, this is absolutely fascinating, isn't it? I mean, here we have another No right from the western extremity. As you say, Little England beyond Wales, they sometimes call it. There's Pembrokeshire, but really quite decisively No. 19,979 yes, 26,712. There's Pembrokeshire, 53% the turnout, and the shares 42.8 to 57. I mean, really overwhelmingly No in Pembrokeshire, No majority of 14.4%. And now Wales, after 18 results out of 22, there we go, there's that patchwork of red and green building up there over the map, the 552,000 winning posts now we settled down at, and let's see how near the line they are. Here's the yes vote at 417,011, and the no vote some 30,000 odd ahead of that, 446,913. And the shares 48.3 to 51.7, and that's the majority for the noes. So far then of 3.5%. It's pretty tight, but what have we got to come? We've got Carmarthen to come. Heavily Plaid Cymru area, just solidly Welsh nationalist area, with a Labour vote too in there. That should really be a comfortable yes. Powys, that rural area, Huw, the largest area of Wales over here, quite near the English border though, could go either way. Caerphilly, Ron Davies's constituency here, quite a large electorate in Caerphilly. That'll be decisive up there. And of course Gwynedd, which should go green for yes. But it really is still too close to call, Huw, I'm sorry.
18 down, 4 to go. Too close to call. We were chasing the Welsh Secretary, Ron Davies, for some comments, understandably. Don't blame him at this stage. Mr Davies has decided that he will give his comments after the last result, and one understands why that is, simply because we'll probably have to wait until the last result to find out exactly what has happened. Rhondda Cynon was, of course, a big victory for the yeses. So let's go back there for a few comments and join Phil Parry. Phil.
Yes, hello Huw. This was a boost for the yeses, but was it that significant a boost? Maybe earlier in the evening it may have been. As we saw early on, it was moving towards the yes campaign, and that is indeed what happened. I'm joined by Pauline Jarman for Plaid Cymru. You must be happy with this. Is it enough?
I think it's an excellent vote when you consider that the no campaign started in Rhondda with Labour members. The MP for the Rhondda came out no. So I think that the vote as far as Rhondda Cynon was first class. As far as the All Wales vote, it's looking increasingly disappointing. And if it is a no in Wales, I've just got one question to ask the no campaigners. Where does Wales go from here? When can we expect these hospitals? When can we expect these schools?
Well, perhaps I could put that directly to Betty Bowen for the no campaign, who's with you. Disappointment here in your own area, Betty Bowen, but do you feel it's going your way, or how do you feel tonight?
Well, as I've told you before, Phil, I never count my chickens till they're hatched. There's still quite a number to come in. I don't know how they're going. If I said I wasn't disappointed about Rhondda Cynon, I would be lying. I am disappointed, but the people of Rhondda Cynon want a Welsh Assembly, and that's fair comment.
And it is your area. I mean,
and
you
yes,
and Carys, you have campaigned tirelessly around
here. Yeah, but the
haven't you?
unfortunate part about it, I have to admit one thing. We've been all over Wales. We've been spread our wings maybe a little too far, and we've reached heights, and unfortunately I neglected my own little patch. But
this is going to be a disappointment, isn't it, for the Rhondda MP, of course, Mr Alan Rogers?
Well, I can't speak for Alan Rogers, I can't. I mean, that's up to Alan if he wishes to speak about it. I know it's a disappointment for me, but I did...
That's all we got time for, Betty Bowen. Thank you both very much indeed. It's still very, very close to call.
Yeah.
That's it from Rhondda.
Phil, thanks very much. We're going to the count, and it's the big one for Ron Davies. His own seat is Caerphilly.
Dyma'r canlyniadau ar gyfer Caerphilly. Here are the results for Caerphilly. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwrwyd dros yr wyf yn cytuno a dylid cael cynulliad I Gymru oedd. The number of valid votes cast for I agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 34,830, 34,830. Nifer y pleidleisiau dilys a fwrwyd dros nid wyf yn cytuno a dylid cael cynulliad I Gymru oedd. The number of valid votes cast for I do not agree that there should be a Welsh Assembly was 28,841, 28,841. Nifer y papurau pleidleisio a wrthodwyd oedd, the number of rejected ballot papers was 263.
No surprise there for that the Yes campaign should be celebrating. Caerphilly, Ron Davies' own patch. He'll be thrilled with that, no doubt, although the margin is not huge. It's certainly a definite one. Over to you, Peter.
Yes, all right, Caerphilly, one of the biggest of the electorates in Wales. Here we have it then, the result in Caerphilly. Yes, 34,830, 28,841 for no. Turnout just below the halfway mark. There's Caerphilly down there, Ron Davies's seat, the Secretary of State for Wales. and the percentages there, and the yes majority of 9.4%. Quite a convincing yes majority in Caerphilly. Now let's just add the whole of Wales together. After 19 results, just 3 to come: Carmarthen, Powys and Gwynedd, and the yes vote. 552,000 to reach the target, 451,841, and the no vote, 475,754. Just almost nipping the winning post there, but it's still some 80,000 short of the 550,000 that the no's need, and the yes vote is still 100,000 or so short. So we still have everything to play for. Huw.
Peter, thanks very much indeed. Well, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? And we're still not predicting. We are still not predicting for reasons that you will understand. Let's go down to the National Counting Centre. Our colleague John Pienaar is down there. John, what are you picking up now?
Well, until just a few moments ago, there was this discernible, tangible sense of gloom and doom among the devolution campaigners. Certainly the Labour people, those few Labour people still sitting around, who had been fairly chirpy until a couple of hours ago, were looking more and more despondent. And then along came the Caerphilly results, and with me now Phil Williams, a veteran from Plaid Cymru, until recently the coordinator of their self-government committee. He was talking very gloomily about the things slipping away. When that result came in, he suddenly chirps up a bit, so hope's springing a bit more.
I didn't say so gloomy. What I said was that this was going to be so close, it was going to be within 10,000, I would say. It would be decided by the last result, and it won't decide anything. And the reason it won't decide anything, because what was on offer was not the most popular option. Now, I was involved with a self-government campaign. Now, I know we don't get a majority, but there was excitement. And if we'd had on offer what Scotland was offered, there'd be no doubt about the result. But what was offered, it was good, it was an improvement, it was better government, it'll harm Wales if it votes no in the end.
But surely the fact that Wales appears to be so lukewarm about the model of devolution that is on offer, they would have been triply lukewarm about the kind of...
I was lukewarm about this. It was an improvement. It was nothing to do with self-government. It didn't have the real powers. I mean, having the powers to pass laws, that's exciting. You can change the nature of society. This one was an improvement. It's anything's better than the Quangos. Anything's better than John Redwood.
We've heard some muttering, haven't we, that perhaps Plaid Cymru didn't deliver as well as they should have done in some of those areas. Are the recriminations starting now, just briefly?
No, I don't think so. Plaid Cymru have a very clear policy. We stand for self-government within Europe. That's our policy.
You there, Mr. Williams. Thank you very much, Huw. Back to you.
John, thanks very much indeed. Are we in a position to give you a prediction? I think we probably are in a position to give you a prediction at last. Let's go to Peter.
Right, Huw, here we have the scores so far then. 451,841 for yes, 475,000, just 24,000 ahead for the no's, with 3 results to come: Carmarthen, Powys and Gwynedd. Now, we reckon that the percentages at the moment are 48.7 against 51.3 for the no's. A lot of scratching of heads has been going on by our experts behind. The computer's been working at hugely fast rate, and we're just going to stick our necks out now and make an estimate of the way we think it's going to end up. But we could be wrong, because it's very, very tight. Let's see what our computer says. We think it's going to be 49 to 51. The no's are going to take it by a very small margin indeed. It still could go the other way. Don't get overexcited in the no campaign, but it does look like no. That's our very tentative first forecast. Huw.